We are reconvening the meeting. We were in executive session earlier, and we are now reconvening to the regular meeting. So let's begin with roll call. This end?
Hiroshiato, Director, District 5.
Claire Wilson, Director, District 2.
Jeffrey McAnalloy, Director.
Carol Gregory, Director, District 4.
Director Peterson.
Sally McLean, Superintendent.
Okay, we will now have a presentation of the colors by the Federal Way High School JROTC. Please rise.
Color guard, pen, hut, carry, colors, forward, heart. Color guard, halt, left, hey, present, colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry, colors. Color guard. Halt. Fall out.
Thank you. Now, we will have a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? You gonna make an amendment?
Oh, it might.
So I'd like to actually amend the current agenda to add, after 13, add item number 14 of Policy Governance Report, and then adjust everything down one.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to amend the agenda. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We're now on the main motion as amended. All in favor of the main motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, approval of the consent agenda.
Madam President, I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda of November 25th, 2014 as submitted.
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We are now moving to Mr. Mark Davidson, Deputy Superintendent, and the student voice presentations.
Thank you, President Gregory. Good evening, President Gregory, members of the board, and Superintendent McLean. I will start off tonight's presentation with by introducing Laura Brown, Director of Equity and Achievement. Laura.
Good evening, Director Gregory, Superintendent McLean, and board members. It is my pleasure to stand in front of you this evening and to present some wonderful Federal Way High School students to you this evening. These students, with the wonderful support of David Stone and Adrian Chacon, went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to the MSAN conference, the Minority Student Achievement Network Conference, and these students have prepared a presentation for you, created by them. So I am so proud of them, so I will let them get to it.
And I will correct myself, this is not We Scare Hunger. Welcome.
Just because I'm African American doesn't mean I'm uncivilized, because I am. Because I'm not.
Just because I'm Asian, it doesn't mean that I should get straight A's. I'm like everyone else. I struggle in some classes just like everyone. I'm not perfect.
Just because I'm African American and Caucasian doesn't mean that I'm going to end up pregnant and addicted to drugs. I actually have straight A's, and I'm going to keep it that way.
Apparently, because I'm Mexican, I'm supposed to be involved in narcotics. But in reality, I'm not a big-time drug user.
Apparently, since I'm Polynesian, I'm supposed to skip school and get high every day with my friends. But in reality, I stay in school and I try to graduate.
Just because society believes stereotypes define who you are, it does not mean you have to live up to that. Break those stereotypes and show them who you really are.
Hello, I'm Sion White. I go to Federal Way High School, and this is my second year on the MCN trip.
Hi, I'm Kiwari Wonka. I'm a junior at Thomas Jefferson High School, and this is my second year going to the MCN conference as well.
MCN stands for Minority Student Achievement Network, and that's the opportunity to engage. While we're there, we get to discuss the barriers that students of color face in their own schools, and we get the opportunity to network with other students across the country.
We get the opportunity to create action plans that we will be showing you in a couple minutes on how to break barriers between culture and race, as well as we plan on things we can do to motivate students who are in that minority category.
Hello, I'm Leanna. I'm a junior, and this is my second year as well going to MCN. And I'm just one of the lucky people to have gone on this incredible trip, and I'm even more lucky to go for a second time. And to explain why we were chosen, it's not just because of our skin color. And we just know what we can do and what we can achieve, and we want other people to understand that. And we are the leaders of the future. We're ready to show them that they can do better, and that's why we were chosen.
Hi, I'm Ayana O'Neill. I go to TAF Academy. I am a junior, and this is my first year going.
Hi, I'm Marianne Winena. I go to Taguma High School. This is my first year going to, and I'm a senior.
So what we learned, we learned that not only students stereotype, but also teachers do as well. So it's saying that teachers don't really know how to teach their students when it comes to learning history about a minority's background or culture. And also minorities sometimes avoid stepping out of their comfort zone, because usually you see kids skipping school, it's because they don't want to go to those hard classes that they feel they can't do, so they stay within their comfort zone by skipping those classes.
In our schools, we also have cliques that consist of the same minorities. We stay with the same people that we're used to. We're not open to seeing other people and meeting new people and learning other different cultures. Also, students of color tend to lack expectation of themselves. For example, their brother or sister dropped out of school and they're doing fine with the education they got. They think that if they stop going to school, they might also do well in the future, but it's not always the same thing. Also, in Federal, we don't talk about race. We try and avoid it as much because everything seems just fine. We need to learn about race, where we come from, our backgrounds, so that we can know ourselves and learn about cultures as well.
I'm Jackson Patterson. I'm a sophomore at Taft Academy.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Frias, and I'm a sophomore at the Federal Way Public Academy.
Okay, so how are we going to make a change? Well, to put it simply, we'd like to start small. Talk and present our ideas to our teachers and principals, and also hopefully get approval from you guys, the Federal Way Public Schools Board of Education.
In our presentation, we want to include race, achievement, and expectations that students should have for themselves. As was previously stated, Federal Way is not necessarily a city or a district that talks about race, and it doesn't seem like we're very comfortable with doing that. And we want to make sure that the students that we're talking to know that it's okay to talk about your race and your background, and that your background doesn't define what you can and cannot do. As Jackson was saying, we want to go to our individual schools and give presentations to the high schoolers there after we've done this with our middle schoolers in the district. We want them to know that there are people that can reach above and that can accomplish many things.
My name is Brody Martinez, and I'm from Todd Beamer High School, and this is my first year with AMSAN.
My name's Marcelo Berganza. I go to Decatur High School. I'm a junior, and this is my first year attending the AMSAN conference.
And our action plan is that we're gonna raise the awareness and expectations about what kids need to accomplish in school and in life. And we're gonna talk about the achievement gaps and how we can change it, because kids nowadays, they don't have confidence to just stay in school and just get their work done. And that's why we're gonna start small, and we're gonna let these kids know that we're here for you, and we're gonna make a change, and you can be successful in life.
We're also gonna present to them real life examples of people who have dropped out of not finished their high school because either they have not been able to get right to it and do what they have to do, or they have dug themselves up in a hole where they are not able to get themselves back up and be successful. Also, we're gonna be able to go down to relate to them at their level and make them feel comfortable to be able to open up and have conversations about them becoming successful and how they can develop in the school environment to just become great.
My name is Mohammed Igal, and I'm a sophomore at Thomas Jefferson High School, and it's my first year going on this trip.
I am Ramon Aliana. I go to Truman High School. I'm a sophomore, and this is my first year going to the AMSAN conference.
I want to thank you for taking your time of listening to us today.
Yeah, just mainly thank you to everyone, Brown, Stone, Chacon, for just letting us go. We'd like to thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to go to this amazing conference. Like Leanne said, it was eye-opening yet fun to know a different perspective, because we come from the West Coast. Finding everyone from the West Coast and their perspective is really eye-opening of how different it is compared to us. So yeah, we pen your approval.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So do you have any questions for them or anything?
I want to share a couple of things. First off, I want to encourage every one of you on December 10th at 3:30 p.m. across the street to go to the stakeholder meeting for students for our next superintendent search. You have voice and you have opinion that can be shared, and I encourage you, December 10th at 3:30 across the street, please come and share your voice. Secondly, I want to share that we had a student supervisory committee and an adult advisory committee that met for the first time last week for the superintendent search, and both of those committees said, what is one of the strengths that we have in our school district? And both committees, the first answer was diversity. So please know that it's recognized not only from students, but the adults as well, that is a strength of our district. And thank you for the work you're doing, and it's totally appreciated.
Wow. There's a difference between equity and equality, and what y'all are talking about is an issue of equity. about access and opportunity for all students. And who better to talk about access and opportunity that students themselves that every day walk that path. So I'm so incredibly proud, and I would be your first participant to sign up if you want a guinea pig, because I think there's nothing better than hearing from a peer. It's one thing to have your mom tell you something. It's another thing to have your dad or your teacher tell you something. It's another thing to have someone who looks like you, talks like you, and acts just like you talk about it, and being willing to walk alongside you. So Ms. Brown knows how to get a hold of me, and it's just an incredible opportunity to help us in this journey that we all need to be on in Federal Way, and you can certainly lead the way as a student voice and student leaders. So thank you so much.
I kind of feel compelled to make a comment because your opening remarks about people painting with a broad brush reminded me last week when I was at the Washington State School Board Directors meeting. When I first got there, it was really shocking. I almost felt like I was at a European Heritage Conference because there really wasn't very much diversity. So it's great that you're going to be, representing different cultural views, because when you're amongst a group that's not diverse, telling stories amongst themselves, they can really get off track. And I'll give you an example just along the lines of what you're talking about. There was a conversation about Native Americans that because the cultures have been oral cultures, that somehow that creates an impediment for Native American students to be able to read and write, which to me is absolute nonsense. But you get into these situations where the same story gets repeated and it becomes a truth. And unless there's somebody there to say, hey, this is not right, it can be different. And unless they have that experience to create a different picture, you really can get misguided activities going on. So I'm really glad that you're standing up and feeling the need to represent different cultural perspectives, because it's really important. And I hope that when the conference is done on this side of the mountains, that we see students like you at that conference, because there were a lot of student participants there, but there wasn't a lot of diversity, I'll tell you that. So kudos to all of you. Thank you.
I just real quick want to say great presentation. This isn't the first time we've sent a group like some of you went last year, and it's just cool to see the investment made. And all of you are obviously passionate about Federal Way schools. You guys want to make a difference here, and to go to a conference like that and just be with other people and just to have I see you're all inspired right now. And my charge is go back to your schools and do it. Don't just talk about it, do it, get it done, and we want to see the change you guys are talking about. And I'm just so glad that we're doing this investment. And I want to thank the chaperones, Brown, Stone, and Sharon. That's the kind of Rome. But you too, disinvesting, and it is so cool that what's going on in our district, and thank you for being a part of every one of you, and great presentation tonight. Thank you.
I want to just finish with saying, yes, you obviously have our support to go forward and talk, particularly to middle school students. I'm so glad that that's where you're starting, because often that's where the most difficult experiences occur. And kids don't quite have the confidence in themselves to fend off disappointment. And your encouragement, I think, can be of great support to them. So congratulations, and look forward to hearing about your activities at the middle school and then at your own schools. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for modeling the way.
So I also just want to take like 2 or 3 more minutes, because I was not able to go to the AMSAN conference, but Mr. Stone and Ms. Chacon have gone for 2 years, and I just feel like they should have I want them to speak, because they were with these guys for that whole entire time. So if you don't mind, I really would like for Mr. Stone and Ms. Chacon.
Okay, we have to be nice though. Hi, good evening to you all. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to go and take these young people with us. And it's wonderful to see Federal Way put such an emphasis on supporting and developing the people of color in this district. It's actually the reason I came to Federal Way is because I wanted to become a role model and leader for people that looked like me as well. And these guys are they're taking their first steps to doing something like that. It's so amazing to watch them become empowered and have difficult conversations and getting some of that education at the different universities that we visited on how to talk about diversity in a positive format, and they're ready to go. So we're excited to see what comes next. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank you guys. Good evening. I'd like to thank you guys for the opportunity to take this group and go 2 years in a row. It was really humbling to be there. It was also it was a remarkable experience to stand back and actually watch and not be able to guide these young adults through that process. Ms. Chacon and myself, we constantly wanted to jump in and really kind of lead them in a certain direction, but to just watch them and allow them to kind of process through and build friendships, networks, and then and be able to process themselves and kind of move it forward was just remarkable to watch. And I felt blessed to be there, and I felt like they really went with a mission and came back with a goal, and they're ready to move forward because they're constantly talking about it. And so I'm excited as you to see them put their action plan to work and to better this district and bring that conversation to light and make it something that's useful and comfortable for all of us. So thank you again.
One additional question. Last year, the team that went indicated that they were probably the most diverse team of any of the teams. Was that the same thing this year?
Absolutely. I think it's a little uncomfortable right off the back, right? You're walking in where there's diversity, and we kind of had the conversation like, you guys truly represent diversity in this group, as we did some icebreakers and started to kind of talk about who we were, what we represented. And then when they walked into that room, and they could probably speak more to it, when they walked into that room and saw the demographics of the group, and a lot of them, all of them really coming from the East Coast and that area. I think there was one other district from Arizona besides us. It was an eye-opener both years for me, and I would imagine for them as well. But we truly represented diversity amongst that group, and I thought that was the uniqueness that we brought, and that allowed us to, in my opinion, build stronger connections and really be a resource for a lot of other individuals or districts that were represented there.
Thank you.
Can I just say one other thing, and that is, you talked about presenting to students and middle schoolers, but I think also the message you share is important to share with staff and leaders as well, and that hopefully as you move through this, you may have an opportunity to present somewhat a bit about the same that you presented to us about bias and about kind of beliefs that one may have that they may not even be aware they hold as a teacher and as a leader. And I think it behooves each of us to do some reflection and to have a student voice be the one to kind of spur that conversation on would be truly a really very good experience for all of us, not just for our students, but for staff as well, and all of us.
Thank you again.
Very proud of them.
First of all, President Gregory, my humble apologies for misleading you there. Actually, well, we were waiting for the young man to come for We Scare Hunger, and he's not arrived yet, correct, Randy? So if we maybe could find a way as we move through the agenda, my apologies for doing that. And I also have to say, if I may say, I, as an older person, I am optimistic and hopeful every time I see kids. This group, most especially, I feel good about my future here in America. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll be happy to take that presentation when the person arrives.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now moving on to public comment. Paul McDaniel.
like to start off with two statements real quick. I took the opportunity today to go on to the Federated School District's website and look at polling procedures. And the two I want to look at, GP3 and GP1, governance procedures, board's job description. And first sentence, the job of the board is to represent the community, or our community. And I wanted to think of that as, you guys are my voice, so that if I have something to talk about, you guys are the ones to talk to. And the second one is GP1, where it describes the board supporting the welfare of students, the work of staff, and the interests of the community holds itself accountable to the citizens of the district. So I feel that as being, you guys are the last ones to talk to if I have problems with certain things. I'm a blessed man. I'm lucky enough on an average week I get to hang out with at least 9 different children of a variety of different ethnics, ages, school districts, all that stuff. But last Monday, I had a not-so-fun conversation with one of the children. It's a child who goes to a school around here. He's a 12-year-old adolescent boy. And he had told me that he had been receiving iPads and that they had been handing out iPads at Nautilus, the school he goes to. And when he was doing a voice search, he had said corn. But Siri had interpreted that as porn. And it responded with a bunch of pornography on his iPad at school. Now, I didn't know if he was just a 12-year-old boy pulling my leg, telling me that stuff. So this morning, after I took some time to bake some pies with the second graders at Nautilus, I went over to the office, and I asked the front desk if that was possible. And they were pretty shocked to hear the same thing as I was, so they were like, well, we'll take a look at it. I just happened to have a lady named Kimberly Wolf there at the time, and she's an IT staff member. And she had said in the conversation that you guys filter some of the internet browsing, but that you're unable to search, to filter Siri. So I was like, I'd like to know if this is possible. I'd like to know if these children walking around with iPads are able to look at porn. So she pulls out her iPad and starts putting in the word corn. And I said, no, I'm not looking for corn, I'm looking for porn. And at that point, she decided that it was not in her best interest to do the search, being that she was on a district device. I didn't feel that I had got my answer completed. I had told her that I wanted to go to the school board tonight and to talk to you guys to see if that was something that actually happened. So I ended up going to the, what do you guys call it, the ECS, the Educational Service Center. And again, I was actually greeted by a very nice lady at the front desk who was just as concerned as I was, considering they both had kids. And I asked her if I could talk to somebody. She ended up bringing down an IT staff member who's actually a department head. And he confirmed that that is possible and that they are able to look at porn on these iPads. And that there is no way to lock down, they know of, certain aspects of the search capabilities of these devices. Well, I've since then been contacted by the principal of Nautilus, and I've also been recontacted by this tech department gentleman. And the consensus is all the devices that they've been giving to kids have no way to lock them down. They were released to the children before they were properly tested, and I was told that it was because that they were nudged gently by certain people to get it going, primarily the board. And I wanted to know, why would we take the risk of providing these devices to children without actually taking the time to properly test them to make sure that they will be safe for the environment that is being put into? I don't get it. I mean, we gave these devices to kids, and now they have the access to porn. And I thought the premise of the school, and even one of your own procedures right here, says that your guys' goal is to protect the children. Is the staff are responsible for creating and maintaining the safest possible environment for students at all times. That's one of your policy procedures, 3000. I'm kind of confused on that one now, of how it got through and why is it still being able.
Thank you. I would like to call on the superintendent, who I know has been working on this, to respond, and thank you for bringing that concern to us as well.
Last thing, when I was at the district, they had mentioned that this was brought up last week, but no one was told about it.
I don't know that, but Superintendent McClain?
Thank you, President Gregory. And I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you Director Ron Mayberry, who I know has been working with our filter company, Palo Alto, to ensure that we are able to filter iPads in a manner that we would expect.
Yeah, earlier today it was brought to my attention some concerns, and we've worked with our team to see if any of those concerns were true. What we found was that Google and Yahoo and other search sites have made some changes in their practices, and they've embedded all their searching within secure socket layers, which is the HTTPS sites that you might see when you're e-commercing or at bank or paying your bill online or any of those sorts of things. So with the nature of secure sites, there is a process that hides that content, privatizes it basically, so that I cannot see your credit card information or other private information that I shouldn't be privy to. And so we did acknowledge the day. We discovered today that we did have some unknown issues with some of the filtering. And so we contacted our filtering company, Palo Alto, immediately and asked for assistance in applying a fix to this situation. As of about 4:30 today, a fix was applied, and there will be a minor inconvenience in that our students will be asked to set a setting within any of the browsers they select. So whether they're choosing Google, Yahoo, Bing, Ask, or others, they'll be asked to make a setting change, and that will allow us to continue filtering as was the case prior to this change that some of the browser folks made. Prior to this, we've been filtering. We do monitor our filtering, and we're continuing to monitor our filtering. This fix is applied right now. So if you were on our district device and tried to go to Google, you would be processed through this same step, student or staff. And just as a follow-up, this is any device situation. So whether you're on a personal device on our mobile website or a school-provided Chromebook, school-provided Windows 7 device, iPad, etc., it's the same result. It's a web browser. Siri, on the other hand, does do its best to detect what was spoken, and so possibly it would have displayed possible results, but it still would have been blocked as soon as a student attempted to click the link, with the exception of the hole we found today. And again, that wasn't an iPad problem, it was a search engine problem, and that's been rectified.
I would like to also add that I've been working with communications in conjunction with Ron to take this opportunity to send reminders to staff and parents about the appropriate protocols for internet usage within the district that apply to both staff and students.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Any further? I have only this one public comment. Okay, we're moving then to school board comments, and let me suggest that.
Excuse me, President Gregory, our student has come. He's arrived.
Oh, okay. Mind? Just a minute. Okay, let's move back on the agenda. Yes, yes.
Good evening, Superintendent McLean, Board President Gregory, distinguished board members. It gives me a pleasure to introduce Alan Lundy, who's actually coordinated We Scare Hunger activities last Halloween. And we actually were kind of a little bit, there was good and bad news. The good news is two of our teams made it to state that night, and so they actually, two of our high schools were playing in football games, one at Federal Way and then one over in the east side. So some of the students that normally would participate in the We Scare Hunger weren't able to show up at the rally, but we had several hundred students that did show up, and Alan was responsible for organizing the entire event. And so I asked him to come this evening to present We Scare Hunger, the initiative, and he's going to let us know how we did as a school district. So, Alan Lundy.
Good evening. I apologize for my tardiness, but I'm very thankful for this opportunity to speak upon behalf of the We Scare Hunger team. So this past Halloween, so October 31st, 2014. This is our third annual We Scare Hunger that was happening here in Federal Way. As you know, Josh and Caleb Dawson, members, graduates of Federal High School, were the ones taking on the pass. So they contacted me this summer. I said, "Hey, Alan, I have this great opportunity for you. You want to take this on?" I said, "Sure." I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but it was a really good experience. It taught me a lot about growing up and communicating with people I don't know. A lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, but it was a very good learning experience. I'm very thankful for some people up there, Claire Wilson, Sally McLean. I've seen you guys' support over a number of events I've been a part of in Federal Way, as well as Randy Kazar back there. There's Randy. So he's very, very helpful, as well as John Hutton. I have a video to show that has a list of a whole bunch of different members, part of the Federal community, that just has unconditional support that I couldn't have done it by myself. As far as getting the community involved, we were able to get all the high schools on board. So Thomas Jefferson, Decatur, Todd Beamer, Federal Way, Taft, Federal Way Public Academy, and as well as Mount Rainier. We're all part of planning this event. We had about 300 students come sign into the event, and we were able to raise 7,670 pounds in one night, as well as during the week of Halloween, so 27th through the 31st, we had an event going on at the stadium, and if you brought in popcorn, Kiwanis was able to help support us, and if you brought in canned food, then you were able to receive free popcorn. So that was also a different aspect we added. So I think I will try to play this video. Let's see. Let's see.
If you love somebody, better tell them why they're here, 'cause they just may run away from you. You'll never know quite when, well, then again it just depends on how long the time is left for you. Take it in, but don't look down. 'Cause I'm on top of the world, eh? I'm on top of the world, eh? Been waiting on this for a while now, paying my dues to the dirt. I've been waiting to smile, eh? Been holding it in for a while, eh? Take you with me if I can. Been dreaming of this since a child. I'm on top of the world. 'Cause I'm on top of the world, eh? I'm on top.
So I'm gonna go down the list real quick. And so as you see, it was hosted at the new Town Square Park in Federal Way. And so I thought it was really cool to get a new area Federal Way exposed to the public, as well as kids like me, because a lot of the kids didn't even know it was there until this event. And so I thought it was a really cool park, and to be able to use the basketball courts, all the area that was provided there. John Hutton was really, he worked really well with us with providing the construction lights, so because it's pitch black there at night, but we were able to make it work. As far as all these people go, Woodstone Credit Union sponsored the main event. Helped us with T-shirts, all supplies. DJ Trophy. There's a trophy for whatever school brought in the most canned food during the week. So Decatur High School received that. But yeah, DJ Trophies in Federal Way, we were able to donate a trophy for that. So I'm very thankful for that. Free the Children. Nicole McDonald from Free the Children. I think one of her PR people was constantly emailing me back, and they was able to send 2 representatives to the event. Multi-Service Center provided a truck for the whole night, and so the kids came all the way until 10:30 p.m. and donated food, so they had one spot to donate the food to. It should be John Hudson. Sorry, misspelling. Ryan Wilson from the mayor's office. Lou Larson, Yolanda's from For the Children, communication with Deborah Steinberg, and then Miss Dawson, who was just a really great support and resource. Okay, this video was made by the Thomas Jefferson ASB Director of Technology, and they made that in a couple days because I didn't know I had to make one, but I'm really happy. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and thank you for letting me speak tonight.
May I?
Do you have any questions for Alan?
I would like to make a comment, if I may. So I just, again, Alan, want to thank you for an amazingly well-organized event. I was impressed when I got the agenda of the sequence of speakers and student activities that were occurring that evening, that you had things, pretty much boiled down to every 10 minutes for the entire 2 hours. And I actually enjoyed myself. I stayed for the whole time, and it was great. I was almost ready to break out into that one dance they were doing, but maybe next year. So anyhow, thank you for your organizational capabilities. I know events like this take a whole team, but it takes someone willing to pull all those pieces together. So I'm very proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for speaking at the event as well.
And I love the park as well. Having had it been at Albertsons for the last couple years, cars going in and out, it was a little bit crazy, but to have an entire space dedicated where students kind of took over, and it was awesome with the sound system and the lights. It was like the biggest dance party. That'd be an awesome place to have an outside dance. So thank you for all the work, and I know students really enjoyed themselves as well as Sally and myself. And the drum competition was fabulous.
Yes. Decatur and Thomas Jefferson drum lines were able to participate. Thank you, then.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Before we go to superintendent comments, I just wanted to make a comment to the board that we have put on the work study agenda for next week the WASDA conference to go into greater detail. This will give us a little more time to talk about what we learned. So tonight, you can mention some things, but if we could leave the detail for next week, that would be helpful. Let's now go to superintendent comments.
Thank you, President Gregory. I have fairly brief comments tonight, which I know will probably surprise some people. But I wanted to first start with the fact, to give people a heads up, that the December work study is next week, December 2nd. But with the long holiday break, that feels almost like tomorrow. And the topics of discussion for Tuesday night's work study will continue to focus on student achievement, including the process that we've launched for developing measurable goals, a hands-on demonstration of math standards, bring your pencils, demonstration of the district's data warehouse, and as President Gregory just mentioned, a time for the board to discuss learnings from last week's WASDA's annual conference. You've obviously seen two of the highlights of our work most recently with the presentation for We Scare Hunger and from our MSAN students. But as we continue our focus on equity, Dr. Edwin Javis, who was our featured keynote speaker at the September 2nd rally, was here for 3 days last week, working with our principals and school teams to begin identifying additional ways to enhance our instructional equity. And I just want to point out that this work represents a part of our commitment to continue to change outcomes for all students. And for myself personally, I believe this represents one way, as Federal Way School District being part of a greater society, that we can change perspectives for future generations. On a small political note, for the first time in the 14 years I've been here, the King County Executive, who happens to be Dow Constantine right now, and his staff visited the school district for the better part of an entire day earlier in November. It was great to have the opportunity to have Executive Constantine with us. He spent some time visiting our central kitchen production, talking to leadership staff, and then visited Todd Beamer, specifically meeting with a group of students who are part of targeted King County grant called Stay in School. It was great to listen to those students talk about the reasons why they have chosen to stay in school. And then we finished off the day at Camelot Elementary, which has a preschool program, is a green school certified school in our district by the Federal Department of Ed and by King County, and also has a high cap program that has competed and won nationally at the middle school level, even though they're grades 3 through 5 students. Executive Constantine has a express desire to shift the dollars in our society from the prison system to the preschool system. And so part of his conversation with the team as he went throughout the day was kind of continuing that conversation around the concept that's taken root right now, talking about cradle to college opportunities for our students. And in closing, because I'll have a couple more opportunities to talk to you tonight, as Thanksgiving approaches, I find myself reflecting on the many things I'm grateful for within my life, thanks to Scott Crabtree partly, and the Federal Way School community. I am thankful for our 5 board members. Your active engagement in policy governance helps provide me with the guidance and support to help lead this district in the directions we are wanting to move into. I'm thankful to the leaders of this district. They are thoughtful, passionate, and incredibly intelligent. I am both humbled and grateful to all of the students, parents, staff, and community of Federal Way for trusting me to lead Federal Way Public Schools. And as Thanksgiving approaches, I am thankful to know that we live in a community that will take care of those who are struggling. I also know we will continue to take care of each other and that we will find the time to take care of ourselves. So I encourage you to each spend a moment being reflective of the people that you are thankful for in your life. And thank you for this opportunity this evening.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to school board comments. Mr. Hiroshi?
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Mr. Hiroshi. Mr. Atto?
I'll report that I'm starting to get around to seeing the schools, and I had a visit today at Todd Beatum High School, and I do appreciate Principal Joni Hall taking the time to sit with me and have an extended conversation. The trips are going to be very valuable because I get so much insight. The purpose of my trip there was that a political science student, hopeful, wanted to do an interview of a board member, and so I sat with him. He's a student from Guatemala, and he knew no English when he first started at Todd Beamer, and he's doing excellent. Really speaks to the quality of the students that we have, whether it's the race summit at Sagali or opportunities like this. I'm always impressed with the students that we have in the district. I had a boss that used to play Stump the Chump, where the chump was always the guy getting interviewed. And I did get to a point where I couldn't answer the question, and that had to do with why do we have 5 district areas for the boards, and how were they districted out? So I intend to find out about that. But he had some really good questions, and I had a really good dialogue there. So I do plan on making more visits to the schools because it's just so interesting what you come out with. Thanks.
Ms. Wilson?
Hi. I had a chance to be at the School of Distinction Award with Deputy Superintendent Mark Davidson and staff from TAF and also from the foundation, along with another parent from TAF, to accept the Schools of Distinction. And I know probably in a coming board meeting we'll have Principal Teitler come and talk a little bit about that, but it really is a high honor as far as being in the top 5% in the state for ongoing increases in math and in reading over the last number of years. So was very proud to be there amongst others from our region. Also had the opportunity to be at Todd Beamer and sit in on the IB kind of planning meeting for the rollout of IB, and the whole process that staff have to go through and school has to go through to get ready, and had an opportunity last year to be there in initial conversation, which was my first time really getting to know a little bit more about IB. And so coming in my second year with the same person there, it was really a nice opportunity to understand a little bit more about what was being said, as well as to really share, I think, the board support in not only IB, but the other programs that we have that really challenge our students and keep them in that, the mode of rigor. As a parent myself who's involved in IB, MYP, that was another perspective or a lens.
Why don't you tell what IB
And
is?
International Baccalaureate, and which is the high school, and then middle years program, which is what the middle school program is. And one of the things I will say is that as a parent, it's, as we move forward, going to be really important, regardless of what age you have children, that we define these things so parents understand as well. It took me a long time to know what IB was. But again, it's really looking at rigor and depth of learning and really providing quality education opportunities for all of our students. I had also the opportunity to attend the Veterans Day Assembly at Beamer, as well as, and I know there were several that went on, so that we kind of had ourselves spread around. And also was able to go downtown on Memorial Day for the flag ceremony, and where there were several representatives, not only from the district, but from the city. And I just will say also, college application processes are happening all over, and there are events happening at our schools, and I know there have been events advertised, and I've not been able to make the Federal Way events, but I did have a chance to go yesterday to Highline and to support high school students in completing applications for their colleges and for scholarships. And hopefully, if there are opportunities in the districts in our high schools to support high school students with their application process, it would be great if folks could let us know, because I know as a board member, I would be happy to do that. And it's really a wonderful experience for students to have a chance to talk to folks who may have gone either to the school they might be looking for or looking at a career that may meld with something that one of us have. So it was a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've reported over the last few meetings concerning the superintendent search, and the process has truly begun. The first meetings, I mentioned it earlier, the first meetings of the Superintendent Advisory Committee is the adults, and we chose at the last work study to actually break students out separately. So we have 15 students representing all 7 schools. So our FAR Comprehensive, TAFA, FWAPA, Fedway Public Academy, and Truman. And I can tell you that the diversity and the demographics of both of those committees are pretty phenomenal and truly represent our district. The students are very excited to be involved, and the things that they shared are pretty profound, and I'm looking forward to what the firm pulls together. The next thing I'll do is encourage every single one of you that is listening. There are stakeholder meetings, 10 different stakeholder meetings, and 2 open forums. The open forums are for anybody to go at 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. on December 10th, and there are stakeholder meetings for all other groups between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. It lists on the district website, and I encourage you to please come and share your voice. Everyone has voice, and this is your opportunity to share that as we make a decision the next week as a board, exactly what our superintendent looks like that we're searching for. And I'll also share that we did attend WASDA this last week, and I have been elected as one of the 3 representatives out of District 2 to be on the legislative committee for the next 2 years. So I'll be involved in that portion along with Claire, who serves as the legislative liaison for this. The things that need to happen profoundly out of the legislature the next 2 years really make a big difference for all of us. And I think for us to have voice and vote at that will be important. So that's all I have to share.
All of the meetings are at the ESC?
I apologize, yes. All meetings on December 10th are at the ESC. One other thing I do want to share is there is a link on the website to go out and select 10 of the 33 characteristics. It's a 1-question survey. They give you 33 characteristics, and you pick the top 10, and that is a survey for everyone to take, and it will take you 2 minutes to do it, 2 to 5 minutes. I encourage you to please do that. That's being also compiled by Ray and Associates, the firm that we've done for the superintendent search. So that's another way to share your opinion. Thank you.
There's also a telephone survey that is going on, and I know that because I got called. Do you want to explain what that is?
So there actually are two other surveys. The telephone survey actually is completed. So they did an out-call basis to get 400 outside of what they believed was the district. All of you that we have your email, whether it be staff or parents in the district, will also receive an email this week to do a survey that is very similar to the same survey. We're not trying to over-survey with you, but we're trying to make sure that we truly get an understanding of what you're looking for in our next superintendent. So please be on the lookout for that as an email that you'll receive. But the telephone survey is complete, and all that information will be shared with the board on the 16th. So there'll be 5 components: the student committee, the adult committee, the telephone survey, the online, or the survey that is, the online survey that is done by Ray and Associates, and then also the survey that you'll get as an email. And we'll take all 5 of those together and share it. But like I shared earlier with the MSN students, the first thing we heard clearly out of both committees is what is a strength. The first thing that came out of both committees is diversity. So it spoke very strongly to me. We'll see what comes out of the rest of the stakeholder meetings, but please share and please be involved.
Thank you. I have spent a lot of my time since the last meeting focused, and the previous meeting, focused on revisiting or visiting some of the leadership team of the school district to really get a stronger insight on what it is their work entails. And for some I met last year, but frankly, I was so overwhelmed last year with everything I was learning that I need to go back and start over and look at it in more depth. And I want to thank, just recently I've met with Marie Vahar, we met today, with Laura Brown, I met last week. Fortunately, somebody called me to remind me of the meeting. And earlier with Cindy Black. And I will continue this because for me, it's an opportunity to take what I've learned and really evaluate that and fill in the parts that I'm still confused about. And it's been extremely helpful. So I thank you and look forward to meeting with the rest of you.
Just real quick, 2 things. One, just wanted to thank, earlier this month we had the South King Firefighter Foundation. They went over to Wildwood and gave brand new jackets to all the kindergartners over there. A school that is just doing some fantastic work, has some challenges, but they are just going after it. And it was just really cool to see firefighters over there just encouraging the staff over there. And the kids are proud of their coats and just the way that those guys were giving back to our community. So that was good. 2, I had the chance today just to hang out as a watchdog dad over at Green Gables at my daughter's school, and that's just a great opportunity just to be a parent and be there, and just great appreciation for what our staff are doing every day. You know, I was also out on the playground today as it was raining and it was outside recess and my shoes and everything else were soaked. And but fantastic. But you have those people that are out there every day, you know, with those students during that recess time, and they're just, it's a thankless job, but they're doing an amazing job caring for our kids. I'm so appreciative of what they do, and one thing, as Jeffrey was talking, I don't know if his value with some of the upcoming forums is if we want to email back some of the people that wanted to be part of these superintendent search committees. If we basically sent an email back, maybe we already have, of informing them, hey, we have a forum coming up, we want to hear your voice, we have a survey coming up, we want to hear your voice, and I'm sure you probably already have done that because you're
So there was a letter to all that did not get selected that actually gave the exact schedule to please find that stakeholder opportunity.
Fantastic.
To share.
Because, yeah, obviously we want to have everybody that would like to have their voice shared to be able to be heard. So thank you.
Let's move on now to legislative update. Claire?
We don't have a lot other than the conversation at WASD and everywhere else continues to be around McCleary and now 1351, which is the reduction in class size, which really lays right on top what McCleary is also trying to do, only it covers the entire gamut, K through 12, as opposed to just your early grades classes. And so it the conversation continues to be, the all education budget means that if it's all education, there's nothing for anything else. So all education, although it's a duty, it's not a reality when we think about whole children and whole families and what else they need to survive. So it will truly be an interesting session as we move forward, and that's about all I can say. I also know locally that December 1st, I think, is the day that the Democratic Party identifies the top leaders or the top individuals to be considered for Representative Roger Freeman's position. And I will say in the, in the spirit of our community, there's a great interest in making sure that the work and the legacy that not only Representative Freeman, but just on the behalf of our community continues in Olympia. So we'll be really looking forward to who our next best friend needs to be based on who they identify, because I think it's really important to create those relationships early on. So, and I don't know, Sally, if you've got anything else related to legislation that, or the upcoming session that you would want to add, but we're at kind of a ready stance, but not much happening right now.
That's correct. We're at a ready stance. We'll see the governor's budget in late December, and that'll give us what I hear will be the low water mark for us this year.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on now to the superintendent search. And we have 4 action items.
So the first action item is that the committee appointed the 15 that would represent, and unfortunately, Judge Larson was not aware that he was in conflict by even serving. He could not be chair, but he could not even serve on the board because of his requirements as a judge in the district. So there was an appointment made by President Gregory to fill that slot, and also the chair, and that was Mark Kopang. So at this time, I move to approve the appointment of Mark Kopang as the chair, an additional member of the Superintendent Search Committee.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
I think you'll be a great choice and a great addition to that committee, and will do a good job reporting back to us. So
He already has. I mean, the letter that went out, it's been great. So.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Authorize advertising budget.
So we received a list of places to advertise, and at this time we don't have exactly what we've picked out, but I would like to move forward out of committee that we authorize an advertising budget not to exceed $7,500.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded that we authorize an advertising budget of not to exceed $7,500. Discussion?
We'll just have to have a decision by December 16th, but and I'll send the sheet back out, so input from the board, please, and then we can make our decision by the 16th.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Affirm timelines.
So I sent out the updated timeline from the last meeting, and at this point I move to affirm the timeline of the superintendent search.
I second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We are now we now have a motion to establish a compensation package range for the new superintendent. Mr. McAnally?
So this is an item that came out of executive session around discussion. And at this point, I move forward to approve the total compensation package range of the new superintendent of $225,000 to $275,000 to be provided to our search firm, Ray & Associates.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
I'm glad we have data to look at comparables and that kind of stuff, that we're not just shooting in the dark with something like this, but it's educated, informed decision, and I think that's what we as a board, we make the best decision with what the facts we have in front of us. So I think these are good numbers.
Just to explain the process that we're using, we looked at the total compensation packages for the top 10 districts in Washington State, and also a set of districts that we use as comparables in determining all other salaries in the district. So those were our two guides, and this is the range that we agreed upon. So seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We are now moving to new item 14, policy governance update. Mr. Peterson.
Well, I've talked at the last board meeting just about some of my learnings and what I gathered from the Policy Governance Conference. Fantastic conference, and some really practical steps. And tonight is just a report out on some of those practical steps that we are doing and continuing to move forward. The first thing, one thing that's fairly obvious is actually we had somebody in public comment referred to it tonight. They went to our website and they looked at the governance process stuff. And I want to commend our board for being attentive to governance process, one. And I think we are attentive to our community, and I think the district is as well. And I think tonight was case in point of just community brings up concerns or whatever, and we respond. And I think that's fantastic that we're doing that. We've earlier this year we went through our governance processes and brought those to some changes, brought that to the board. The board approved those. The committee right now, we're going through the executive limitations, the borders, the boundaries, that you will, of the district and the superintendent that they're to operate in, as well as the board superintendent relationship. And that just has to do with how we interact, how we evaluate, and how we move forward with the superintendent. And those are all policies that we've been using, and just a chance to really take a closer look and bring those recommendations like we did with the governance processes to the board. So the plan is at this time is that our next work study will be bringing those to you for your consideration, and then at the board meeting on the 9th of December, hopefully the board will be able to be at a place to make some decisions on however we want to move forward with that. Also, our website is great, like I talked about, but I think right now where it lacks is our ends are not very clear. You have to go basically to a PDF to get to them. And really the ends are the driver of what we do as a district. Those four things are pillars, and I think we could do a better job with promoting those, of having them being easily accessed and noticed and absorbed by people that go to our website and click on Board of Education. So I would like to move that the board would give me myself permission to work with the district on some of those changes of basically making the ends more accessible, basically get it out of a PDF. Keep the governance processes in PDFs, I think is fine, but really get the ends there into a place that are not 3 clicks away to get to it, but really one of the first things you see when you get onto our site. So that's my motion.
I second that motion. And
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
I would totally agree, and I would say that when we were at WASDA, Bellingham was sharing with us their website where they've got their ends or their goals, but they also have the GPs and their board policies right there, so that both of them are evident. You can see what the end is, but also what GP or what. So I think that would be a fabulous way to kind of put those things together. Thank you.
Yeah.
the other component that ties right with that Bellingham shared is their strategic plan and where they're moving. So the strategic plan lies exactly with what their policy governance is, ties it back to it along with their budget piece. So I think it's something we've been throwing around strategic plan, so we'll discuss more next week because I had the focus when I was WASDA with that.
Yeah, and for me too, I think with the website, that's really our ownership of we as a board feel we want to represent. And I think our district's done a good job, and this last year we had a revamp of the website, and I just think that's always something that we can always look to do better and better. And so there's just a few tweaks in there that I think we can do just to make it accessible, and appreciate the feedback. So.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
The last piece I want to talk about is moving into tonight. We're probably going to hear about the timelines for reviewing ends and executive limitations in this coming year. Part of the recommendation from our committee is, and came out of this conference, is the whole idea of having a coach or a mediator, a mentor, that kind of a person that could come in and really help us practically with going through the ends in the coming year, and possibly doing an investment of not just kind of trying to find something for free, but having somebody come in that maybe is doing policy governance well in their district, either out of state, here locally, and really not just talk about it in broad terms, but really, for instance, ends one, and really help the board process and see what kinds of things, what kind of sub-ends we maybe want to put to that, and just help us in our conversation, our thinking, and to maybe go into new depths in how we evaluate and how we, not only the quantity, but the quality of the feedback we give to the district. And you know, one of the things I got at this conference is anytime you do change, it's 5 to 7 years. And, you know, we are right in the middle of that. We've had a ton of change on top of that, a whole bunch of new board members that weren't there at the start of that. None of us were at the very start of when we started policy governance. It's a great tool, and I'm so glad we're doing it. But I think it's just, it's okay to just not feel like we have to be perfect right now, but we definitely need to continue to pursue excellence with that. And so I think bringing in a coach, possibly for our ends when we go through the 4 ends this year, as well as looking to have, like we did last year, a retreat focus in the winter time that would just be about policy governance. And obviously it's difficult to find a week at a time, but I think part of that is not just hitting it once in a while or once every 4 years or once every 2 years, but really if we're going to commit ourselves to do it and to do it well and to do with fidelity, I think that's a commitment as a board that we should look at making. So I'm open to trying to find some of those coaches, those people, those mentors that could come alongside in those opportunities for us, and just want to find out if that's what the board's interested in as well.
My wonder would be how it fits along with our strategic planning, because in my mind, that work goes hand in hand with the plan, and that if we have someone in strategic planning to help us out that's also well-versed in policy governance, we may be able to, in essence, not do two things at once, but really make sure that they're both aligned, because our strategic plan really should be our methods to get to our ends, and also we should be able to measure those to find out whether in fact we've been reaching them or not. So I would want to make sure we would not do those separately, that they may be one and the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I guess how I see that, we haven't really, strategic planning has been a concept. There has been nothing done with that. I actually have some feedback, because I did talk to these people at the Policy Governance Conference about it, and making sure that we don't, in strategic planning, begin to violate and grab onto something else instead of staying with policy governance.
Yeah, no, it has to be within the guise of policy.
And what the term they actually use is, instead of the whole idea, because strategic planning has kind of got a catchword and a whole toolbox that goes with it, they actually talked more about strategic thinking, and just that, and it's that forward-thinking model. And so I actually have an article on that from these people, that they don't just do school districts, they do multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar corporations that do policy governance as well. Just how do these corporations, these other school districts all over the country, how they go about strategic thinking, and really not using the whole concepts of policy governance along with that whole idea of looking ahead and looking forward. And so I'll be at the work study be giving you that article, and there's a couple other articles too, just to kind of pepper your thinking as we get into talking about the ends, on what end statements look like. And I thought I understood that, how these end statements came about, and it was actually a great learning experience for me to understand the components of it. And I think all of us getting educated in those kinds of things won't negate any kind of future planning. It'll actually just make us better board members and really help us not violate but build on our policy governance.
So my feedback is that, it's been almost a year I've been sitting here now, and when I first started, I had some real heartache and headache around policy governance. But I think the direction we're moving, the committee, Director Peterson and President Gregory, the work you're doing around it is making it become viable and livable, and something that we begin to abide by and live by and understand. I think that's part of the issues, that we don't all understand it. And for us to take it and make it a living, breathing document that we walk with and talk with every day in and day out, and everything we do, I think is a pretty phenomenal thing. And so I'm pretty excited the direction we're going. So thank you for your work.
Yes, I learned something new when we last met on how the ends interrelate and what the hierarchy is, and I didn't have a clue. what that was, but I got it explained to me, so that helped. What we would like to do, and I don't know if we can pull this off, but we would like to have a portion of each work study on policy governance. And knowing our schedule, we'll see what we can pull off. We'd like to do that as much as we can and not add additional retreats and meetings where we can handle it another way, but that's a goal.
Absolutely.
Anything further on that? Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Okay, now we're moving on to the Global Leadership Initiative Committee charge. And let me give a little background on this. And last September, I believe, a year ago last September, a motion was made to create a Global Learning Initiative board committee. And with the tumultuous year that we had last year, this kind of got set aside. We'd like to go back to that. This is my recommendation. To go back to that and really focus in on what we mean by a global citizen, and what does our community believe that is. And so Director Wilson was the chair of, was appointed as the chair of that committee, and so I'd like her to speak to this and present a motion.
We had an initial charge in the previous motion that was kind of a broader charge, and if you look at what the global, what END is that each student will graduate with the skills and academic knowledge to succeed as a responsible contributing member of a global society. And the original motion was to really gain perspective and monitor progress on that end. And there was an initial meeting and some initial conversation, and as President Gregory said, that there was an initial meeting, and that's really kind of where it stopped. So Superintendent McLean's come on board, Director Gregory and Superintendent McLean and myself have had some conversation, and really the conversation is around a revised GP7, which would be really coming up with a community definition of what a global citizen means. And the change from the original motion is a change a bit in the purpose. The membership increases from 8 to 12 to 15 to 20. And the authority changes so that there'll be a staff liaison that's appointed by the superintendent, and that all use of the Federal Way resources will be requested through that staff person. And the 15 to 20 members representing the board would be created, a list would be created from myself with input not only that has currently come from district individuals and community members, but from hopefully my fellow board members as well, to make sure that we are reflecting not only the diversity, but also the diversity in thinking that we have across our district. And that once we had a group of 15 to 20, that group would be presented back to the board for approval. But until we actually have a purpose with some authority and membership, it's very difficult to share with anyone what their role would be and kind of what the outcome of that would be. And my hope would be that we would be reflective of all of the stakeholders, including student voice in that. So I would ask that the board move to approve the revised GP7 Global Learning Initiative Board Advisory Committee, rescinding the GL1 committee motion passed on September 10th, 2013.
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Danny?
Yeah. The original committee actually was brought in January of this year is when we brought it in online. And the concept of it, though, was discussed last September when I think we as a district were really pursuing the whole global learning initiative and what that looked like, what that was going to look like for Federal Way. And I really think our former superintendent, Rob New, really embodied that, owned that, and was a driving force with what the future was going to look and hold with that. Obviously, we're in a different place now. We have a new different superintendent, and but yet we still have the same district that is very diverse and wants to see those kinds of things happen. It's a reality of the society we live in. Is we're a global community, and how are we not just preparing students better and differently than the education that I received when I was going through high school? Obviously we need to change and adapt and give our students all the opportunities that they can have. And so the original intent of the committee that I saw was obviously, and it's one of those things that's part of ENDS 1, was to really monitor that. Where are we going with that within the district? And obviously an investment had been made and that kind of stuff, and just where, not just in talk, but in action, where we're at with that. And obviously this last year there's been a lot of different changes, and the report outs and that kind of stuff have been difficult. But I guess my question is tonight is, I see the timeline, the term, and all that stuff for this committee. I just don't know how it fit. I get that it's a discussion on what a global citizen is. I just don't know how that, whatever is discussed in that committee, where it comes into the timeline of the board to really help us in policy. I don't know if this is, and the board can, if there's other board members want to talk about, is this a question that we're really asking right now, or is this just something that is just is a quandary of a few? I don't know. So obviously we haven't had a public discussion on this. We haven't really had a private discussion on it, and so I'm just curious for board discussion, where are we at as a board with this? Are we taking a committee that had a certain trajectory and we're just revamping it entirely? Do we want to, or is this really not even Global Learning Initiative Committee ENDS 1? Is this really what is a Global Citizen Committee? That's what their term is. That's what their job is to find out what a global citizen is. They're going to come back, report to the board. Do we want to have that report back when we're going through the ends? And so that's one of the reports we get back, and how we formulate some of our policy, and then have that committee cease? Or is I just don't understand all the thinking in that. So I'm not necessarily shooting it down by any means. I just want to better understand what we're trying to accomplish with this committee tonight.
Mr. McAnally?
So Director Peterson, I voiced some of your same concerns, but at the same time, the only sitting board member that actually participated in that travel that we as a district invested in, I think we need to allow them the opportunity to take that work that was done and bring it back to the community and have a discussion around that within the community. And the time frame of the term is from now until June of 2015. I don't know, it's not feasible to really bring anything back before we cover ENDS 1 with what's proposed in January on the schedule currently. So the investment that was made, I think we allow the time to happen until June and then make that decision. So let's see what comes out of it, see how it fits into ENDS 1, and make sure we're following our policy piece. But based on the investment, allow Director Wilson to gather the individuals from the community and share the input and where we're going from that perspective.
I just don't want to get anyone thinking that this is about travel. This is about a global initiative and what it means to be a global citizen. Students have been doing that work in their schools. We've had students travel abroad. We've had students come here. We have students that still have relationships with schools in Australia, schools in England, and schools in Finland because of the travel that did happen. But it's not about that. It's about what is that we need to continue to do, not only in our community, but also in our schools, to make sure that our students are ready. We have International Baccalaureate, we have Cambridge, we have World Languages, we have many, many things that are all part of a global initiative. It is not about a trip. We have instructional strategies that are going on every single day in our individualized approaches with students that come from reforms, that come from the countries that we visited and places that we've learned. So I think it's really important to provide an opportunity to have that conversation and also have a dialogue with the community, which is what community has asked for and we've been trying to provide. And it isn't as much about monitoring as much as it is opening up an open conversation and a two-way dialogue about what we'd like our community to look like, what we'd like their involvement to look like, and also what we'd like the future of this initiative or any other program that we're doing to look like. So I would appreciate the opportunity, as I know others would be, to have a chance to come together and to come up with a community definition that could perhaps inform the board as they move forward and make some recommendations and ways that they could stay and remain engaged and involved as stakeholders.
Further discussion? Mr. Peterson?
I think the concept's great. I think it's actually a great district committee for that. I think for us as a board, that's our task is to create policy and to monitor. And so that's just my 2 cents. Obviously, the board's going to vote how we vote tonight, but I appreciate the discussion. And I appreciate the work we are doing with the Global Learning Initiative. And I think that whole idea of global citizens stuff is not some term that is remiss and we don't know what it, understand it. I think it's something that can always be discussed. But I guess my hope is with the work of this committee that it would go further than just what a global citizen is, but actually how Federal Way is doing that work. And that for me as a board member is important, not just about a concept, but really practically how do we hold the district accountable and seeing that really realized. And I think we've got a good start on that. I've been on the record for saying that, all throughout this last year and prior to that. I think we've done a good job starting that, and that was my whole hope and my intent still as a board member is that we would continue with that, regardless of who our superintendent is, regardless of whoever is at the helm at any particular moment, that as a board we continue to move forward and embrace that. So,
further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no?
No.
Motion carries. Okay. We're now moving on to policy review. Number 16, ends and EL calendar, and I believe it's purple, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
So as an introduction, there are purple handouts, front and back, which lay out, so to speak, the entire school year, which, remember, our school years run from September 1st to August 31st. The leadership team, we have spent quite a bit of time talking about how information gets presented to the board and what our process is for presenting results for our 4 goals or our ends, and the process for presenting updates on the executive limitations, which we often abbreviate as ELs. And I believe the process for the ends or our goals is more time intensive typically than our process for executive limitations. So without getting too tied up in the details, the structure that we are proposing to you for ends presentations starts with a work study so that we have the time to go in depth with the detail of the work that has occurred, and you have opportunities to ask clarifying questions or for additional information. It would be followed up at the next board meeting, the next regularly scheduled board meeting, with a more condensed public presentation. And then again, the third and final presentation for the ends would also be at a board meeting and would be a public conversation for your action. So 3-step process for approving ends: the work study, a public presentation at the following board meeting, and then the third and final adoption or action by the board at the next. Yes. WS is work study, P is presentation, A is action. All right, I do have a key actually on this, but every time I print this spreadsheet, I forget to go down and pick up that key. For executive limitations, well, wait, let me go back to the end. So this year in particular, during work studies, part of what the conversation will be, that leadership team will be recommending are some specific measurable goals, or maybe what Director Peterson referred to as sub-ends. So for example, in ENDS 1, the current measurable goal we have in ENDS 1 is related to on-time graduation rates, and it mirrors the CCER or roadmap region. But we believe there may be some sub-ends in there that we also want to call out as measurable goals. That one's fairly easy to wrap our arms around. Ends 2 around student achievement is much more difficult. And you heard in my comments earlier tonight that what we will be sharing with you at the December 2nd work study is some of the early thinking of leadership team and our entire administrative team around what measurable goals could look like for student achievement. So we'll spend a little bit of time with you at the work study Tuesday before we get too far down that road. But again, as we present each of the ends this year, a part of that work study presentation will be to make recommendations for measurable goals that can be in place as we move forward, recognizing that that the actual language of the ends might change, recognizing that our strategic thinking or strategic planning might modify that. One of the things I think that we've all struggled with policy governance is how are we measuring our progress? I would like to note that for future years, once we move beyond 2014-15 and look at the 2015-16 calendar, we would certainly be recommending to you that ENDS 1 and ENDS 2 move into the fall rather than in the spring. We weren't ready for that to happen this particular year, but in terms of the flow of the conversation, it would make more sense to do ENDS 2 in October and ENDS 1 in November. So you might already be noting that the numerical sequence of the ends does not match the chronological sequence of the presentations. I'm not recommending that we change that. It's just part of the way our work flows. The process for presenting executive limitations would include a presentation at the board, and you'll actually see an executive limitation presentation this evening. With that information and that report then going on the consent agenda for your action at the following board meeting. Sorry. There are some executive limitations that are presented concurrently with ends, at least historically, such as the report on academic acceleration, or EL16. And some are broader in scope, such as the budget adoption or executive limitation 7. So every time we write a rule, there's always exceptions, right? And so in general, for our ELs or our executive limitations, we'll do a presentation at the board meeting, and then that report would be on the consent agenda for acceptance at the following board meeting. So this is our proposed calendar, at least to move us through this year. I recognize that our work studies are currently limited to the first Tuesdays of the month, and would just want to note that at this point in time, budget conversations also will take up some work study time in addition to policy governance. So we will have very full agendas for our work studies for the balance of the year.
So I have a question on my two favorite topics, equity and early learning, are at the bottom on the first page, and they have TBD, and which says that they don't show up anywhere either as a executive limitation or as an ends report, or is it that they will be reported out under each of these and how they fit? What's the...
We have had discussions about our equity work and our early learning work, and recognize that our current policy governance playing field doesn't really address either one of those. So I believe as a leadership team, we would be looking for some clarification around that. Now,
Don't we report out special ed in our regular numbers for student achievement or for number absences and attendance and those kinds of things in our special ed population, early childhood special ed that's K-12 funded? I guess I'm just wondering, we do some things that are early learning, but they're not, our K-12
I've
funded.
heard a lot of different individual comments,
Okay.
not collective comments, that no one wants a student achievement notebook that's 6 inches deep anymore. And that's part of our struggle around student achievement, is trying to understand which metrics are going to give us the best high-level perspective of our progress, knowing full well that underneath that high-level metric, there are millions of data points, literally, to sift and sort through.
will just say that, to me, it's going to be really important that whatever we reflect what's happening in our pre-K and our birth to 3 world, because that is a precursor to the outcomes later on, and that in most of it, I know it's shown up as a fiscal note or fiscal item, but not necessarily in our numbers, and we're serving enough children. It would be interesting to kind of think about that, if there's a way to tie that information in with the other kind of reporting, just to wonder.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have one other question, and I'm just trying to keep the superintendent search focus and lens on it. Aren't EL 13 and 16 really tied to ends 2? And shouldn't we consider moving both of those from March to February with the same time frame tied to ends 2? Because right now they're tied in March, and March and April are going to be definitely very extensive, and the time we're going to spend around the superintendent search. So
I have just 2 thoughts on that.
Okay, all right.
But if Superintendent McLean wants to talk about that first. I don't see it as, part of this too might be we're looking at redundancies here, where we might want to modify ELs and ends, where there's a couple already in mind that just when I had some of these reviewers at this conference take a look, just said, yeah, you guys might want to consider this or that. At the same time, too, I don't want to see us water down our ends conversations. I think those are paramount, and I think at the same time, too, if we have these other EL conversations later on, it's okay to bring it. It's not like we just talk about it 1 month a year. So I'm open to combining everything that would ever have to do with ends 2 into 1 month, and we could do that. But at the same time, too, I think there's value to the board of bringing up a entirely different topic if it fits on the calendar. An EL, maybe we can't get EL 13 and 16 all together at once, but
we have a work
no, it was our intent to bundle ends 2 and executive limitation 13 and 16 together. When I picked the ends 2 work study up from March and moved it into February, I failed to do that on the spreadsheet.
Okay, great.
So we had intended to present those together, and then potentially that empty board meeting work study in March would become a budget work study. Just saying.
Possibility.
Don't get too excited about that.
Do we have a
always for efficiency?
Yeah. So do we have a work study in April, or is there
No, because
spring
that's
break?
spring break.
Spring break. Okay.
I mean, you could choose to schedule one, but at the moment, we did not schedule a work study that first week of April.
Anything further on the calendar?
So I will make those corrections. And I believe, as I understand policy governance, the calendar is actually submitted to you for approval, I assume on consent next time.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. EL6 staff evaluation presentation. Superintendent McLean?
Thank you. So executive limitation 6, which is reflective of staff evaluation, is actually a pretty meaty topic for all school districts in the state at this point in time, not just because we happen to have 3,000 staff to evaluate on an annual basis, but because one of the major initiatives for all school districts in this state is the implementation of our 4-letter acronym TPEP, the Teacher principal evaluation program. So I'm happy to introduce Rick Serns, our Assistant Superintendent. He'll begin this presentation this evening. And then Diane Holt, who was never formally introduced to the board, is serving as our director of, I call it the director of TPEP. She'll tell you what her actual right title is. But I just want to say Diane is a former Federal Way and Issaquah School District principal, and we're pleased to have her rejoin our team to help us lead this really important work for us. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Is this on? I wasn't hearing myself. Okay. President Gregory and members of the board, Superintendent McLean, I want to tell you it's my privilege to have this first opportunity to present to you as in my new position as Assistant Superintendent for HR. And as we just went over, this is the first kind of inaugural presentation for our policy governance work presentations to the board this year. I'm going to begin by kind of giving you just a brief overview and talk a little bit about the infrastructure of our evaluation system, and then turn the time over to Diane Holt and others to talk a little bit more about TPEP. As you're aware, EL6 staff evaluation, if I could paraphrase, says that the superintendent shall not cause or allow any evaluation system that does not measure employee performance that leads to improving student achievement. We believe that all evaluation and all of our staff are tied to student achievement. Of course, teachers work most directly with that and principals guiding that work, but all staff impact that indirectly, if not directly. I think that for quite some time we've been ahead of the curve here in Federal Way, going back many years before policy governance, before the institution of TPEP, in having a good, solid staff evaluation system in place. We have, for example, board policy 5240 and 5560 that deal with evaluation of non-administrative staff as well as administrative performance evaluation. We have a database in human resources for all the evaluations that come in. Annual performance evaluations are placed in employees' personnel file and are part of their permanent record. We have basically 10 different employee groups in our district. We have 8 collective bargaining groups. We have a principals association, and we have non-represented employees. And our evaluation system speaks to all of those. Back something like 14 or 12 years ago, I guess it was, when I was director of employee relations with the district, Chuck Christians and I put together an evaluation toolkit, we called it, which looks like this, that we give to each of the principals and supervisors. And in that, we're in the process of updating that this current year because we had a lot of bargaining this last summer, and we've had some changes with fully implementing TPEP this year. But I did provide for you in your packet these 2 pages that gives a calendar for that toolkit that, as I mentioned, basically addresses the evaluation components of all 10 of our work groups and when those various things are to be done. The toolkit itself provides some backup for that in collective bargaining agreement language that talks about those timelines in more depth. I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, then Superintendent Murphy and the board had the foresight to create a position that Cindy Black held for 3 years, helping principals with the evaluation process and helping them work with struggling teachers, also give those teachers support and help them become effective teachers, or work with the evaluation process to move them out of employment as a teacher if they weren't going to be top-notch teachers. Then I believe it was in 2010 when we adopted policy governance, and about a year and a half ago we adopted the TPEP program that was mandated by the legislature, which basically includes 8 different criteria that principals are to be measured by, and 8 different criteria for teachers to be measured by. And as I mentioned, Diane and others will talk in depth about what that looks like and the work around that. I've had the privilege this year, Diane Holt was a principal with our district a number of years ago, and I worked with her in that capacity. And then she and I both worked in Issaquah at different times, but she came back this year and is currently holding the position of Director of Leadership Development. And I've already had the opportunity to work with her on a number of occasions in different issues that she's working with principals on, and I've just been immensely pleased with the depth of understanding she has on this topic and the support she's giving to both principals and the HR department. And I'd like to turn the rest of the time over to her to present the work we're doing with TPAP.
Thank you. It is exciting to be here. Let's see if I can get the technology to work, and then I'll really be excited. Okay, here we go. I am Diane Holt. My correct title is Director of Leadership Support. And so I work with all of the administrators in our district, and I have also worked closely with everyone helping this TPEP thing become something that we can put our hands around and that we can understand. You can see from the very complex poster that it's a complex process. The teacher and principal evaluation pilot was born out of Senate Bill 6696 during the 2010 legislative session, and the evaluation provisions in the bill were a part of the larger reform effort made during Washington's Race to the Top application. And Federal Way Public Schools joined as a RIG district in 2012-2013. As Rick said, I recently came from Issaquah. I was a principal there for 5 years, and we were a part of the pilot district. So I've been on the TPEP process as a principal for 2 years before I came this year, which I think has helped me greatly in understanding it a little bit better and having gone through it with my staff for 2 years. The poster, I don't expect you to understand, but I wanted to just kind of give the overview. As Rick said, there are basically the components of the law is that there are 8 criteria that principals will be evaluated on and 8 criteria that teachers are evaluated on. It also shifted from a 2-tier type of evaluation, satisfactory, unsatisfactory, to a 4-tier, where we have distinguished, proficient, basic, and unsatisfactory. It also combined an evaluation of those 8 standards and also student growth. So for both principals and teachers, there's a student growth component, and there is a evaluation of the 8 criteria. Following up on that, there's an instructional frameworks. There were 3 that the state chose, and in our district we have chosen the CEL 5D, which is University of Washington framework for our teachers, and AWSP for our principals. And that's the leadership framework. So I'm going to go further into just hopefully giving you a glimpse of this and the forms that have been created this year for our teachers and principals. I started with just this amazing group of principals, and we had the charge of operationalizing the contract language of TPEP. And we started with this quote. Superintendent McLean had given all of us a book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I think it's something like that. And this is a quote from that book. If we could get all the people in an organization rowing in the same direction, you could dominate any industry and any market against any competition at any time. And we really saw the 5CEL-D work as doing this. This is bringing every department, every principal, every teacher to have common language about what quality instruction looks like. And so we've kind of gotten on this charge and we've gotten excited about it, and I think it is helping the entire district to row in the same direction. Here is the timeline for Federal Way implementation. As Rick said, in 2012, 2013 was a RIG year, and that was the year that we selected CEL 5D as the Federal Way Public Schools Evaluation Framework. In 2013 and 2014, all administrators completed Stage 1 and Stage 2 of the state-mandated training. That was 7 days total of training. Cindy Block led that. She's a state-certified trainer, and she continues to do that work this year. We also implemented the Cell 5D evaluation with all provisional teachers and some teachers who volunteered. So principals kind of dabbled last year, and they got their hands wet. They did their provisional teachers, and they also dug deep into what do those dimensions look like and sound like, and what is the process for the Cell 5D, because it's different than a traditional process of evaluation. We also, last year, they negotiated the contract language with FWA for the evaluation process in Federal Way, and provided optional Saturday classes, used some grant monies to have some optional Saturday classes for teachers. This year, this is when I came aboard, and we developed the Federal Way Public School Systematic Evaluation Process in accordance to the contract. We presented all administrators, or in the process right now, we're at hour 5. We have presented all administrators with 6 hours of mandatory turnkey teacher training, so 100% of the teachers are trained in the process consistently. One of our biggest pieces that we wanted to put out was this is the Federal Way School District process, and we wanted to make sure that everybody understood it, and we wanted to have the same forms and the same process in every school so that it was consistent. We have implemented the Cell 5D with all certificated staff required by law, and that's pretty much all your classroom teachers, any teacher that's in front of children. The people that aren't in it are people like librarians, deans, those kinds of, just a few positions that are not directly contact with kids. We have developed the Federal Way Public School Principal Evaluation process also using the AWSP rubrics. We're going to get into a few of these in just a minute. I'm going to give you some examples. And we created the administrative PLCs, and that's just a professional learning community coming together at both Vince and Cindy's positions, or meetings, monthly meetings. Principals come together and they look at the AWSP rubrics, and also they bring a teacher that they've each chosen as their kind of designated teacher, and they're going through a PLC together talking about the process of evaluating that teacher and sharing with each other. So we have some ongoing administrative support in the monthly meetings. And then they've created my position, which is a Director of Leadership Support position to coach principals in instructional leadership, supporting both the Self-ID work and the AWSP goals. It's a choice for principals to choose me in the coaching role. Certainly I'm leading the TPEP thing, but you'd be happy to know that we have 60 administrators in your district and our district, and over half of them have chosen to have monthly coaching meetings with me. We work on everything from going to scripting a teacher together to talking about their goals to truly, as a literacy coach is to a teacher, I am to the principal, and come in alongside their work with them. And when I recently went to a Self-ID consortium of people from area districts, there was high interest in my position, and I think it's something to be very proud of in Federal Way, that you understand that principals need support and need somebody that they can just talk through these difficult process that we're all embracing. Now I'm going to give you the crash course, so you are probably going to be more overwhelmed than not. I did not give you all the dimensions. However, I did want you to know that in the 5-cell, there are 6 dimensions and 37 indicators of quality teaching. And that is good news. Teaching is in a quality way is well defined by the Self-ID, research-based practices that will help our students achieve the SBAC and the Common Core standards is well defined. This is the graph, or the graphic, that we came out with for principals and teachers to help them understand. Presently, we have 449 comprehensive teachers, and what a comprehensive teacher is, they are evaluated on all 8 criteria, and they are your provisional teachers for 3 years. So they're on all 8, and then every 4 years, other teachers are rotated in, okay? So everybody will be comprehensive within the next 4 years. And this is the process, and as I said, we've done 5 hours of training already, and we have 1 more hour. Hour 1 and 2 really focused on the self-assessment using the rubrics that teachers go through, and the pre-inquiry conference with their administrator. Then hours 3 and 4 was on this implementation cycle where they are observed for 3 times. Part of the process here is it's more of a coaching model where the principal comes in, they observe, they script, and they notice and they wonder. They don't come in and take a half hour and say, okay, you're satisfactory, you're not. It's really about a teacher setting a professional focus and a growth based on their self-assessment of the dimensions, the principal coming in and giving them feedback and noticing and wondering of their practice. And then in January coming up, there will be a formative conference where the evaluator will take a snapshot. They will evaluate each of the indicators, but not the overall dimension, and just say, this is what I'm seeing based on the evidence that I've seen so far. Teachers also have the chance to provide their evaluator with evidence beyond just the observations, but predominantly it's during the observations that the evidence is gathered of their instruction. And then in May 15th, there will be a summative conference where the final evaluation is given, and with the new state requirement, there is an overall score for each teacher. And that score is ultimately sent back to the district and up to the state. So that's what comprehensive looks like. Focus looks very similar, except for there's just 2 observations, and they're only evaluated on one of the criteria. We presently have 744 focus teachers in our district.
Can I get a really quick clarification, because I'm getting a little bit confused. There was this idea that there's 8 things that the state requires. There's 8 leadership criteria that I think is separate and distinct from that.
Correct.
You mentioned there's a 4-tier evaluation process. And even though you said there's 6 dimensions of teaching, you call this a 5-dimensional evaluation. So could you kind of touch on what?
It's absolutely confusing, and I totally understand your question. What happens is with the state, there are 8 criteria for the state. I didn't give you a handout with those. I can provide that for you if you want through email. Because there's 3 frameworks, there's a Marzano framework, a Charlotte Danielson framework, and we have chosen the self-ID. Those indicators are all put under the same 8 criteria of the state, and it's another document, just choosing in what I was gonna, what I gave you. So these sub-indicators are all put under the 8 criteria of the state, and then that is what is evaluated, is those 8 criteria. Does that?
So when we say 5D, the plus, it means there's 6 dimensions.
There are 6 dimensions. Because the University of Washington had 5 dimensions before they came into the state work, the one part that they didn't have covered with their 5 dimensions was the collaboration. And so, yes, they added this 6th dimension.
Okay.
But the actual 6 dimensions are divided up all over the place under the 8 criteria.
Okay.
Trying to avoid that confusion. It is, like I said, we tried to get our heads wrapped around it. I got to say our principals and teachers are doing awesome at it. I did want to show you this picture. This is all these purples are where there's mandatory rewriting required of the principal. And so just to help you understand the shift for principals, this takes approximately 8 hours per teacher for a principal to go through this entire process with one teacher. I put a slide in here that helps you understand how that manifests itself into principal workload. You probably have heard about this as you travel across the state and listen to other people, because certainly districts are writing us, how are you dealing with this? So here's an example of change to the number of observations in the principal's workload. At Decatur, I was just meeting with David Brower, and he was, and I were talking about this last year. He had 12 teachers on Teaching for Learning Standards. Our contract required 2 observations each to complete. So basically he had 24 in his entire school of observations that were required. He had 52 teachers on CPDP that had no required observations, no required write-ups. Certainly they came together and discussed their goals, but there was not a required observation. With the new evaluation system, he has 24 comprehensive teachers, 6 observation each, that equals 144. 40 focus teachers with 4 observations each, that equals 160 observations. So in Decatur this year, there will be 304 observations. For 4 administrators, so that's about 76 per administrator. Now, while that sounds like a lot, it's exactly what we want to have happen if we want instructional leaders to be in the classrooms, is it not? And we have to embrace this and be excited about it, and it is exciting, and there's a lot of excitement and hope with this. We certainly believe that we know from everything in education that having a quality instructor in front of a child is the most important thing we can do. And so having our principals be out there in 76 per administrator, being out, living in the classrooms, watching the teaching, having having those dialogues is a good thing. I don't want to say it's not a good thing, but I also want to say it's a tremendous impact on principals, and we have to start thinking differently about what can they let go of and what can we help them with that wasn't there before. I was just with Margot last night, and she has 10 comprehensive teachers. It's a little different in the elementary when you only have one administrator. So she has 60 comprehensive observations, and she has 15 focus teachers, 60 there. So she alone has 180. So it's big. It is big. And so I speak for the principals to say it's big. Certainly Federal Way has led the charge, and that's why other districts are calling us, by putting assistant principals into every elementary that had over 460 head count to help with this. And I will tell you from the front lines that our principals are doing an awesome job. Just thank your local principal. This is a new shift for them, but they are shifting, and they are doing it, and they are working extremely hard.
Can we go back to that slide? Just for me, the obviously it's 120, but still 120 is a lot, and I understand.
Sorry, I didn't do the math right.
Well, that's fine.
Yes.
That for me, that's
Yes,
like irrelevant.
correct.
It's a big number. For me, it's the whole idea of how with quality control. Obviously, this system is in motion. We're in the infancy stage of really running this out. I remember this last year going to different schools, and it was TPEP time, and it was like, how am I going to get all of these done?
How do I do that? Yes.
And obviously, like you talked about, some of that's a culture shift, some of that's a priority shift. What is the district doing though to help administrators with that? Or, I mean, some schools, I know Green Gables, they don't have an assistant principal. They were one of the ones that received that. So they're still working with 120. What is the district doing to help those administrators out? Just because right now we could be checking boxes and going, we're doing observations, but really what this EL6 is about it's about improving student education, not just checking boxes and sending something to the state. For us, it's about really like the whole intent of this, why I got excited about it. It's about not just accountability, it's how do we really help instruction, and I remember, Cindy Black up there when we first presented this and we're talking about it, and, I totally agree that it's better for us to do it well than to have the state try to mandate everything. Like this is something we want to own and do well regardless of whether the state told us to do it or not. So so it goes back to my question, what are we doing to really help our principals right now? I'll go to the teachers here probably when we get later slide, but to help with some of this stuff where it's a huge workload and to really have quality observations with all the other stuff that's on their plate.
It's a great question, and one that I think we need to keep asking. As I said, we have added 6, I think, assistant principals to the elementary schools. I know that in we also have put funding towards the schools. Each, and I'm not sure, I can't give you the exact percentage, but each school gets additional funding in their budget. And I know one principal is purchasing some coverage for lunchroom, so in the secondary, so that the assistant principals, who also have a full workload of observations, are not spending 2.5 hours in the lunchroom anymore. They're spending that time in the classroom. So we're getting creative, and yet we also need to continue to have the dialogue, I think, about the impact on the principal and what can we do to help with behavior and discipline and lunchroom and these things that a principal has to do and they're called away from at the same time as they're trying to do all of the instructional observations. Now, there is a shift in the number of hours, too. I mean, some of those observations are 15 minutes, so it can be a little bit misleading that, 140, but some of them are just 15-minute observations. But it is a shift. But the shift really is a principal needs to be in classrooms every day doing at least 1 to 2 observations, and if they do that, they'll make it. And they'll be okay. And so it's a good shift for them. At the same time, we also need to support them with the other things that traditionally principals have had to do. And I know in my own school I had to educate the families, the community, the board, that I may not be in every lunch room. I may not be on the roof smiling because you've read a million minutes. Not that I don't want to do that, but that it really is a mandate now that we have to be instructional leaders and that we need to know good instruction and help our teachers to make that transition.
Got it. And I guess I'm just stuck on the practicality of it all. Is obviously, like you showed the chart, it's not like it's every day of the year evaluations. Right. There's seasons of that. Yep. And so that's the thing. It's not just, yeah, you guys just need to get it done. It's how are we practically in the trenches with our administrators going, we know this is a different task, and how can we really creatively not just kind of theoretically talk about it, but how does this practically happen in the real life of
Certainly,
elementary
practically,
year?
I've given them schedules,
Okay.
timesheets. We've mapped it out. I go side by side with them, and we figure out who they have and how they have it, and we mark out how are you pacing yourself, how are you getting out, go with them. Hoping, we did a whole hour 3 and 4 was on how to make sure that you're finishing your coding right when you're there. So some tips on how to make it a faster process too, so that you don't get to the end of the week and have 7 observations to write up, but that you do it immediately. So I would say they've given them, there's my role, and then there is creative scheduling at this point.
Great, thank you.
And actually, to dovetail into what Director Peterson is saying, 15 minutes is not a very long period. When you walk into a classroom, try to get settled, there's some change, and then also scoring. So part of it is that really how much time it's being done?
No,
And
that's
it's
just,
not,
that's the time in there, and that's
right,
where the
but
8
still,
hours
it's like,
comes.
it doesn't, I mean,
it's much
more.
longer than
They're
that.
they're taking longer than
Absolutely.
that. If they're doing it correctly, they're
Correct.
spending a lot more time than just 15
Right.
minutes in those
Correct.
observations.
Correct. I was just saying that the previous observation was 30 to an hour. Last year's when we said 24. These are 30, 15, 15, but then they also are writing up, which again takes about, at least a half hour to write up.
Absolutely.
It is a big workload issue, so.
And
thank
and
you.
also the conversation also that goes along with that, not just the report, but the relationship, so.
Yep. Thank you, local principal. I also put in your package just the linear timeline and what is happening in the comprehensive teachers world and the focus teachers world. So you can kind of go down that. I didn't want to get into the details. These are the forms that we have created for the Federal Way School District to have all teachers create a professional learning focus and a student growth goal. And these are the forms that every teacher has filled out and worked with their administrator on in the pre-inquiry. This is the student growth goal form, and I can go into more detail if you want it, but basically there is, for comprehensive teachers, a nesting effect where they meet with their entire grade level, then they write goals for their class, whole class, and then also a subgroup within that class. Principal evaluation, we also created the forms for the principal evaluation. The AWSP framework has these 8 standards that are the 8 criteria for the district and for the state. Creating a culture, ensuring a school safety, planning with data, aligning curriculum, improving instruction, managing resources, engaging communities, and closing the gap. And I will say even some of these that sound like they might be not instructional based, almost all 8 are in instructional based, except for maybe criteria 2, which is in school ensuring school safety. So it's creating a culture for improved instruction. So it's very much a focus on the principal being an instructional leader. These are our goal setting form for the principals where they look at which state criteria they want to focus on and create their goals and action plans. And then, as I said, there is a principal student growth goal form as well. Now, we thought Superintendent McLean thought that you would enjoy hearing from the front lines, so I am very happy to have 2 people that have come to share how this new evaluation system has changed their positions as teacher and principal. So first up is Chris Rainey, principal of Star Lake Elementary.
My old school graphic. Good evening. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to share with you tonight. And as Diane said, I'm Chris Rennie. I'm the principal at Star Lake Elementary, and I'm in my 2nd year at Star Lake. I'm a career Federal Way teacher. Been here. This is my 27th year in the district. And Diane asked me to talk with you about, and I have my little notes to make sure I'm saying the right, get my words right for you, is really just looking at how the framework has heightened our focus for our staff on student learning and our best instructional strategies. And what I love about, and I'll refer to it as the rubric, Self-ID out of University of Washington kind of has two documents. One is a framework of instructional strategies, which was the first 5 that you think of in Self-ID. And then when they took that instructional strategies and then turned them into a rubric that we are looking at to evaluate best practices for teachers. So that rubric it gives me those common definitions and targets for instructional practices, and that guides our discussions, our data, and our professional development in our building. So some of the highlights of how Self-ID intertwines in the building culture. When our leadership team was looking at our school improvement plan this year, everything lands on Self-ID. Our 4 main targets for student improvement all fit in with that Self-ID structure. Our first goal is utilizing the Self-ID instructional framework to improve instructional practices. So that's just laying it out right there, that everything our teachers are doing in their instructional practices in their classroom are based on the descriptors on the Self-ID rubric. And we're trying to build that capacity for our teachers a little at a time. We can't just bite off the whole elephant at once. So while teachers are held accountable for everything that is on the rubric, the main thing we're really focusing with our teachers at Star Lake this year is that purpose. Kind of looking at, they call it the spine of purposeful instruction. And it's really looking at what are our standards, what's my learning target for the day? So what do I want the kids to walk out the door today knowing? Am I aligning the performance tasks? What do I want kids to show me? Am I telling them, here's what you need to be able to do? And kind of working that triangle around between that purposeful instruction, strategies, aligning that with the target and what we have our kids doing. And that's always going back to our standards. And if my teachers are just focusing on that, there's that intentionality in every lesson that they're doing. Another piece that we're really looking at is sharing our teacher wisdom, because the wisdom's in the room. And so each month at our staff meetings, we're focusing on a different dimension. And I had Diane holding up this one. In September, we were looking at classroom culture and environment. We're setting our behavior expectations with our kids in September. We're getting to know each other. And so what my coach did was went around to all of the classrooms and took pictures of all the different things that teachers were doing. And when we got together in our staff meeting, not only did teachers share what they were doing that aligned with classroom culture and environment, but we looked at the rubric to see, is my strategy lining up in basic, proficient, distinguished with the descriptors that are on the rubric. So it isn't just my personal bias about, gee, I think I'm doing this really well. I'm looking at that rubric the same way we have kids look at rubrics when we're seeing, are we working towards meeting the standard? And then that's what we do at each staff meeting. So we wanted to bring this out and share with you. It's been so exciting. I love it. And there's so many amazing teachers out there that have great strategies. This gives us that opportunity to share that with each other. My favorite piece really is the inquiry cycle, even though it's kind of like the biggest chunk of time for a principal, because it gives my teachers time to self-evaluate so that it's on the teacher to decide what is it that I really want to focus on this year. So they do a self-evaluation. They go through every single subdimension in that rubric and highlight where they think they are for each one, and then decide on a focus. So even our teachers that are on comprehensive, I'm evaluating them on every subdimension, but they choose a focus, and that's what a lot of our conversation, my feedback, the scripting that I'm doing when I go in for observations, that's what we're talking about. That's our growth area. And they kind of look at it in two hands. One hand is, what do I personally want to build capacity in? And then the other hand is, what do I want my students to build capacity in? And that's that student growth piece that they're adding to that. So I like the coaching piece of it, because even though when we do get to the end of the year, ultimately it is an evaluative process, all of our work leading up to that really is a coaching growth model. The same thing we're doing with our students, providing formative information and then coming up with we call it reciprocal accountability. So if I want my teachers to build capacity, I need to have professional development, conversations, different ways to help them build that capacity as we go through the year. Another piece in our SIP that I love is that attaches to Self-ID is we're doing collaborative teams that are setting those student growth goals, basically our PLCs. And the teams get together and take a look at what's our team goal, what are some teacher individual goals, and then analyzing data intentionally to see how students are making growth. I think the movement to Self-ID this year has helped us to really hone in and focus on that. Not only is that really good instructional practice, but it's also part of the teacher's student growth goal and evaluative process. So in addition, we look at enhancing system and structures to increase positive school culture, which kind of lines up right there with that guy, and enhancing our parent and community involvement. So we already had a lot of pieces in place. We have, we have our family engagement activities. I'm very fortunate to have family liaison this year, so we have the activities that our family liaison's working on. But in addition to that, we have that communication, the plus of Self-ID, which is that collaboration and communication that outlines really specific ideas and almost kind of requirements of how we're going to communicate as a community within the building and with our community that we're working with. So trying to think of what else I want to add. It just helps us to move towards that common focus and a common set of goals for the staff. And with that commonality, I think that increases our intentionality and our rigor and obviously greater student achievement and student growth. So there we go.
Thank you, Chris. Awesome. I had the privilege of being at Chris's building when her staff was coming back together to understand student growth goals early on in the year, and just listening to Chris coach her teachers was amazing. You could see teachers that were really, uneasy about the whole thing, and the way that she helped them come along, and I really do believe this is those conversations and all the dialogue that's happening because of this. And the rubrics really outlining clearly what quality teaching looks like helps us all. Next up is David Couch. David is a 5th grade teacher at Rainier View. He's also doing his administrative internship this year, and I have the privilege of getting to coach him a little bit in that, and he's somebody that we need to keep a great eye on as we go forward for looking at administrators in our district. But David is going to talk about how his teaching has changed because of the Self-ID work.
Thank you, Diane. Good evening, directors and superintendent. How has this new evaluation process changed my teaching? The first impact was it made me a student again. I became a student who studies my own teaching practices and the dimensions of the Self-ID. I began to self-assess my work as a teacher and identify areas for improvement. As any teacher will tell you, there's no such thing as a perfect lesson. The Self-ID plus rubrics provide me with a roadmap for high-quality instruction every minute in my classroom. A second impact for me was the realization that what is being asked of teachers is similar to what we ask of students to do each and every day. We provide our students with a learning target and success criteria. The rubrics provide the same for our teachers. We ask our students to self-assess their progress toward a goal. The Self-ID does that for teachers. As teachers, we have our students working on tasks with high cognitive demand. This process requires teachers to work hard. What impacts would you see if you were to visit my classroom? You would see the locus of control more with students than with me. You would see me using formative assessment strategies that impact my minute-by-minute teaching. You would see students using rubrics to self-assess and set goals. You would see an increase in rigor and cognitive demand in student work. But don't come tomorrow because we're going to make turkeys for Thanksgiving. How has this evaluation process changed my teaching? It has made me a better teacher. For me, being proficient isn't good enough when I know that distinguished is out there. I found areas in my teaching I would categorize myself as basic. Those are the areas I'm improving on. I've seen an increase in student engagement, classroom culture, my lessons have a clearer purpose, and most importantly, student achievement is up. My job is to do what is best for the students. I believe this evaluation process challenges teachers to look at their own teaching, choose a goal, and increase the quality of their teaching. As many research studies have noted, teacher quality is the #1 impact on student achievement. This process has increased the quality of me, and my students have benefited. Thank you.
Okay, I am to questions if you have any for me.
So I would just ask that you please forward the deck to me.
Forward the what?
This deck that you had tonight. We only had partials in here. So the deck you've used, can you just forward
Sure.
that tonight? That'd be great.
And I can also forward you the link that has all the documents on it that you can really explore and dig deep into.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, I'll let Rick finish up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say in closing, it kind of speaks to the question that you had earlier, Director Peterson, that we started, as I mentioned, with kind of an overview of the infrastructure of our evaluation system, and then Diane talked a lot about timelines and accountability, and it's easy to get bogged down in the bureaucracy and the timelines and all those types of things. And I think the last presentation particularly captured what's really happening out there. Is to answer your question, is these conversations that this system requires creates just some wonderful learning opportunities for principals and teachers to move the work forward and help students the way we all want them to. So I'm sorry for the length of the presentation, but there's so many things, but I want you to especially go away with that. Thank you.
I have a question about the principal's role. This is a little bit of what you were getting to, Director Peterson. Tell me how your day looks. When does it begin and when does it end?
Started this morning at 7.
That's when you woke up?
Most of us, it's a 10 or 12 hour day, but I love the job, otherwise I wouldn't do it. But I usually do 3 observations in a day. I'm very fortunate because I'm one of the principals that was able to have an assistant principal. And this year, because it's only my 2nd year in the building, I'm evaluating and observing all of the teachers because I wanted to build that relationship before we do some dividing up. So my assistant principal does do the bulk of building climate and discipline, but but we're still partners in that piece. So about 3 observations a day, and then conversations and meetings about that. And the nice piece is that there's the opportunity for feedback through email, so teachers can choose whether they want to respond to my noticings and wonderings on email, or if they want to come in and visit with me. So it's kind of half and half.
So what I'm hearing is that you now are an instructional leader.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we used that terminology for years, and we did everything but in a lot of ways. I'm not saying people weren't trying, but we didn't have a system for it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I actually have a quick question for the teacher. Dave, if you want to come. We all love Kent Cross, Rainier View and all that. So this is not, but just talk to me. Obviously, this is, Mr. Serns brought the whole thing. It's cookie cutter and that kind of thing, and how we're moving forward. Is there areas for you? Obviously, your experience tonight, as you said, it's been great. It's helped improve your teaching, which is the intent of it. Yeah, obviously, we just don't want to check boxes. We want to see it be beneficial to the teachers. That that's what the principals. I'm sure Mr. Cross was hoping that too. That was be an investment in you. Is there anything that you see, just from your perspective, because you're on the receiving end of that, that we can look at improving in the future? Maybe just in general, just you as a teacher, maybe it was a great experience for you, but as you look at your other colleagues and stuff, how we as a district could improve with it.
Well, I think the biggest thing is the gift of time. We're all still really diving into this. As there's 8 and there's 6 and there's 5 and then there's 4 different ways to be evaluated. And so really taking the time to look at it and see, okay, what does a basic look like? And letting teachers study what does a proficient look like, and then how do I move my teaching from that? So giving them the gift of time. And also, you guys have gifted every school with an instructional coach, which is huge, and that's something that I know other districts don't have. And so being able to work with our school's instructional coach and helping guide this work has been huge.
Fantastic, thank
so
you.
Just keeping that is great.
Great.
Anything further? Thank you very much. That was very worthwhile. We didn't get more than we could handle totally, although we have to go back and reread it, but you were comprehensive and concise at the same time, and that's very much appreciated. Is there anything further to come before the board? If not, we are adjourned.